Hi everyone, this is Matt Johnson with Viral Marketing, and I'm really excited. This is the first Real Estate VA Outbound Prospecting Hangout, and I want to introduce a couple of people to you, and then we'll get into what we're going to learn, which is how to turn cold leads into listing appointments in less than 30 days. And first I want to introduce Jessica Sanders of 1,000 Calls a Day. How you doing, Jessica?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Very, very good. And then, Jessica, tell us a little bit about who you are and what 1,000 Calls a Day is, and then you can introduce Mark Martin and explain what we're going to get into with Mark about today.
Yeah, I am the founder of 1,000 Calls a Day, and basically I have started working with real estate agents to identify leads that they otherwise probably would have missed by not making enough calls to their prospects. So any of your expireds, for sale by owners, pretty much any prospecting calls, circle calls. We hire and train virtual assistants to make those calls for you and send over warmed up leads so that you guys can convert them. Mark is the best agent ever. He's the #1 agent in Austin, Texas, RE/MAX agent in Austin, Texas, one of my very favorite clients, and he's got some amazing results he's going to share with us. He's also a fantastic Dirk Zeller coach, and he's got some really great tips and tools.
Very cool. So, and before we get into that, I just wanted to share, if anyone on the Hangout is not familiar with Mark, I just want to go over maybe a little bit of what gives him the background and the credibility to speak to all of this and why he's tracking the numbers so well. So, Mark, take us a little bit through. You did, a couple years ago when you were really in the business hard, you took off some time in 2014. So, in 2013, you did 120 transactions, $1 million in GCI. What was it about? Was it 32 million in volume?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, you guys, obviously, you have an entire team around you. You have a partner, you both work about 20 hours each, and then you cover each other when you're not there. And you were telling me before we got on the Hangout that you literally have not worked a Friday, Saturday, Sunday in how long?
2 years.
2 years. Unbelievable. So, so obviously a lot of people would love to be in the position that you're at, but you are there for a reason, and that's because of the systems that you've set up, and we'll get into all of that because that's really the key to making all of this work. But let's start off, and let's just get into some of the numbers that people are going to be really curious about. So let's start at the very top of the funnel, and maybe Jessica, can you just share a little bit about what you're doing for Mark and how many calls and contacts a day you guys are actually making for Mark's team?
Yeah, so right now I manage 2 virtual assistants for Mark, and he started back in November with one. So far we're highlighting, let's see, we're doing about 500 to 700 calls a day for each one of his virtual assistants, and we're highlighting at least 3 listings a day and 2 to 3 buyers a day minimum.
These are leads that are being passed over to Mark's team for follow-up.
That's correct.
Okay. So out of those dials, how many actual contacts or connections, whatever you call them, are you actually making when those VAs are calling?
We have consistently across the board, when we use the triple line dialer, a 5% contact ratio. So if we dial, 500 people, we're going to talk to 10 of them.
Okay. So Mark, from your perspective, you've got all these dials being made that are translating into contacts, and then they're passing over leads to you. And we talked a little bit about this before we went live. Explain to me a little bit about what it looks like from your perspective to have that come into you, and then what your responsibility is to actually take those leads, what you constitute a lead, and how you're qualifying and following up with them.
Right. And Jessica, your math is 5% of 500 is 25. So you're typically talking to 20 to 25 people a day for us, and then out of that, identifying two to five pretty consistently. I wanted to give you the kind of astounding numbers, Matt. Is to date, we started with the 1 caller in November, late November. Of course, it takes 3 or 4 weeks to get them trained up, ready to go. Trained on the dialer, trained in the scripting, trained in who they're calling, who we are as a team. And then, our market, right, Austin, Texas. So, and then we brought on, it was working so well, and that first caller didn't even come online until about December 16th or so. We rocked along with her for a few weeks, and it was going so well that we actually added a second caller in, I believe, mid-January. But in that time frame from, I would say, December 15th through today or yesterday, they've made 31,803 dials. They've spoke with 2,092 people. They've highlighted, out of those 2,092 people, 265 leads that they've passed over to us, of which we've set, and I updated this, we've been on 16 listing appointments. We've taken 13 listings. We have another 18 listings that are coming online with us as a result of one phone call that they made to a builder. And then, so of that, we have generated right at $80,000 in GCI from the callers in about 2 months. And so it's been really, really successful. And we've got probably 15 grand into it, to date. So it's definitely a ramp up period. But to get that amount of dials, and we're using, they use the Mojo dialer, triple line dialer, and they then, when they highlight a lead, so a lead obviously can have many, many different definitions, right? A lead can be they have a pulse and they might sell in 5 years. But for us, there's buyer leads and there's seller leads, and they're working on both for us. But a buyer lead is going to buy something in the next 2 to 3 months. That's who we're really focused on. If they're not going to buy for 6 months or a year, we'll put them in the nurture program. Some of them need credit help, credit repair, so we'll put them into a credit repair program with our lender. But we're really looking for those people that we're going to be able to put under contract in the next 30 to 60 days, who will close in 60 to 90 days. On the seller side, we're looking for people who are going to do something again in the next 2 to 3 months. We started calling in December. In Austin, our market, everybody wants to list in March and April. That means that April, May, June are our biggest months in sales and contracts written. So May, June, July are our big closing months. So what we're doing right now is ramping up in anticipation of March, April selling season. We do this every year. This happens to just add leverage for us, but we historically ramp this up every year. We work harder in November, December, January than most agents I know. Most agents I know take off from November to February because they think the business is dead. Well, it's dead from a standpoint of closings, but it's not dead from a standpoint of building a pipeline that's going to be people coming online in March and April. So we want to be ready for those. And so that's why the timing of this was very good as well. But a lead for us is someone who is going to list their property or buy a property within the next 2 to 3 months. And then we have the systems built in to follow up with those people and make sure we get that.
Okay. Yeah, and so there's two keys there. Number one is that a lot of the stats that we were talking about and that we will talk about today are on the seller side. You really are not even factoring in, especially into the ROI numbers, any of the business generated from buyers as a side effect of going after and prospecting for sellers.
Correct.
So that's a big key. So the second thing is the follow-up. So moving further down the sales funnel, obviously you mentioned that it can be, you've got all these, just hundreds of potential leads coming in off of these thousands of dials that have been made, and you have to have the systems in place. So tell us a little bit about your system for following up with those potential sellers.
So Jessica's built a great spreadsheet for us, and so when one of the callers highlights, they get off the phone with somebody, they've highlighted the lead that they're going to do something, they will email us. They will put that also into the spreadsheet so that Russell and I, my business partner and I, can go in and look at the lead, look at the notes, where it is, how much it is, what they've talked about, what their experience was before, if they had listed it before, and then when we need to follow up with them. Excuse me. Typically, the caller is going to put a timeline on when we need to follow up. So they will go ahead and set a follow-up call with the contact while they're on the phone and say, Mark is going to call you on February 21st at 3 o'clock to talk to you further about this, because the lead may have said we're a couple of weeks away from making a decision, or we're 2 months away from making a decision, but we know we need to start talking about it. So they'll go ahead and set an appointment in our Google Calendar for us through Mojo, which syncs with Google Calendar. Mojo syncs with Top Producer. So they click a button, and now that contact is in Top Producer, and also in Google. And then, but what Russell and I do is we take that one step further, and we'll turn around and call that lead, usually the same day or the next day, because sometimes either there may have been a misunderstanding about the timing or a misunderstanding in communication. Usually not. But what we really want to do is find out what's their true motivation, what's their true timing, because a lot of times it's sooner than what they'll tell the caller, because they just want to get, sometimes they just want to get the caller off the phone. That's normal human behavior, right? But then we will come back in and take conversion one step further and look at, let's go ahead and set something up sooner if we can. Or, when is the best time to follow up? And maybe it's not 2 weeks, maybe it's a week, maybe it's 2 months, we don't know. But a lot of times what we found is we're able to come back in and close at an even higher rate. But the main purpose of the ISA is to identify the opportunity. It's up to us to convert the opportunity. If I relied on other people to convert opportunities for me 100%, I wouldn't be doing anywhere near the amount of business that we do. But that's just me. Russell and I take conversion very, very seriously. So if you've watched any of the webinars that we've done or that I've done, we talk about conversion, it's near and dear to our hearts. And so we don't want to pass up those opportunities that we're paying for. And so that's it for us, is going back in. We use Jessica's spreadsheet. If the person just wants to get market updates, but they don't want, they're not going to sell for a year or 2 years or ever, whatever, but they would like to have market updates, click of a button by the caller, they can produce a market snapshot for that person, and now we're in front of them every month, irregardless. So, then they get dropped into a lower bucket of nurture versus kind of right now opportunities. And then we do something pretty cool, which we just started, Jessica, a couple of weeks ago, I guess. But we actually also track from the callers, what are the 2 leads they talked to that day that were the toughest that they weren't able to convert. And that's been big for us, because we then go back and we'll call those people and talk to them. And we've pulled some deals from that. So even if it was a crotchety old guy that day, or they were busy and they weren't able to get them committed to a follow-up phone call or to an actual appointment, but they know that there was some initiative there to do something, we'll come back in and work on those as well. So sometimes it's not even about the ones that they set. It's about opportunities that they didn't even, weren't able to complete. So we've been able to go back and get some of that. And to your point, Matt, about the buyer side, we've had them go back and buyer leads 2 years. And so I've given them buyer leads from 2-3 years ago, and they're resurrecting deals out of that, because maybe those people weren't ready at that point. They're your typical Google pay-per-click lead that's just curious about Austin. Well, now 2 years later, they've gotten the job transfer, they've gotten the opportunity to move to Austin. And so the timing, so we've been able to identify out of 108 buyer leads that Jessica's team has sent to us, we've got 10 that are in the hopper that are going to do something in the next couple of months. So that's, again, and for all the listings that we identify, for the listings we take, of course, we're not counting buyer opportunities that will spin off of those listings. Every listing should generate 1 to 1.5 buyers for us. Sign calls, Zillow, whatever, other opportunities from those listings. So the ROI, I would say, is probably 2 to 3 times what we're looking at now from a numbers standpoint, but that's down the road. This is a little bit of a bet on the come type thing, but you have to work it today to make sure that it happens.
Yeah, so when we're running the numbers, so the direct ROI listings, and it's not coming from any of the buyer leads, and it's not coming from any side effect buyers as a result of contacting those leads that eventually turned into listings. So, I mean, you could potentially be looking at 7, 8, 10 times ROI, especially, and that's not even really counting like lifetime customer value. If you stay in touch with them and they're reselling through you 5 and 7 and 10 years down the road, we're not even counting any of that. So
yeah, and it's interesting because we didn't put in past clients. We haven't put in past clients, sphere of influence, referral opportunities into this mix yet. But my buyer's agents, what's happened is because of the people the old leads that my buyer's agents may have talked to 2 years ago or 3 years ago or last year or whatever, but they never really did anything. My buyer's agents are like, well, wait a minute, that was my lead, and now they're ready to buy, but I never followed up with them. So it's been an aha moment for the buyer's agents as well of, you got to stay on top of this stuff, because if you don't identify it, somebody is going to, and it just so happens, luckily, that it's been us again, but there's other agents out there calling those leads. So, thank goodness we're getting that extra opportunity with them.
Yeah. And so let's go into the lead conversion a little bit more. And can you tell us, for people that may have not seen your other webinars and maybe they don't know your follow-up process. So we know obviously there's a personal phone call from you or Russell, but there's a lot of other things happening because of your systems that you have in place where you're really hitting them multiple ways, and then the phone call is just the sledgehammer on top of that really gives you the ability to bring everything home. So what's the other part of that system, and then what are you seeing in terms of like lead conversion numbers that you can share?
So one of the things specifically on buyer leads that we've trained the caller to do is, if a buyer lead says, well, maybe we're not ready right now, but we'd like to get market updates, see what's going on, the caller will actually set them up on a search in our Real Geek site with their permission. And the caller says, hey, would it be okay if we send you property updates, or and they ask for a description of the property that they're looking for. Buyer says great. They verify the email address, they verify the phone number, and if there wasn't an email address, usually they're able to get an email address, which is great. They'll put them into the Real Geek site, generate a search for them. That keeps us in front of them as new listings come on. On the seller side, we move them into Top Producer. And so we've been assigning action plans to the lead based on the time frame that they're looking at. We also have started in Mojo assigning buckets of they need to be called back in 2 to 5 days, or 5 to 10 days, or 30 days, or whatever, so that Russell and I can hop into that bucket and we can just click on dialing that bucket versus trying to track where am I at on the spreadsheet, because now the spreadsheet's 200 and something leads long. While I'm sitting there scrolling through, now we're able to trigger through the Google Calendar and through Mojo and call those leads that are set for that day or that week. As far as lead conversion, so it's pretty typical actually from a number standpoint. So for example, 265 leads have been highlighted. 108 of those are buyer side leads. The balance are listing leads. We've set 16, we've been on 16 listing appointments and taken 13 listings. So we're above a 10%, quite a bit above a 10% conversion ratio. And as you know, on seller leads, home valuation leads or market snapshot leads or people that are just curious or whatever, typical conversion rates down in the 3% range. So we're doing really well on that. I'm very, very pleased with that, and we obviously, that's just on the ones that are ready now. We've set future follow-ups, so hopefully I think our lead conversion will be higher as we look at it from a global standpoint a year from now. But we're only 6 weeks into it basically. So that's and then from a system standpoint, we built our own system for lead follow-up on buyer leads that are incoming to us from Zillow and other sources. This one we haven't started putting these buyer leads into our system because our system is more built for the immediate need of text, voicemail, email, 10 days of pain type scenario that Ben Kinney came up with. And we've instituted that into our system so that we're hitting buyer leads that are coming in from Zillow and other sources right away. The buyer leads that are coming in from Jessica's team, we're calling and doing that right away, but they're also setting future follow-up calls for our buyer's agents to contact those folks. So, that's I think that's a down the road thing as we look at it even further, is more opportunity to drop them into our system and let it start churning as well. We've got to build the campaigns out to do that.
Okay. And then how does that, are we talking about, this is all on the buyer side, right? We haven't touched the seller side of the follow-up yet?
Well, seller side of the follow-up is Russell and I will call them, even if the caller sets a future phone call. Sometimes which is great, the callers are setting actual listing appointments for us. So we're going on those listing appointments, and that's where we're taking the majority of the listing opportunities. The callers are now strong enough that they're actually able to convert into an actual listing appointment for us. So,
so you don't have to do a lot of the buyer type follow-up where you're doing email, text, and things like that. You're not having to do that on the seller side, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So basically, the phone call, either they're setting the listing appointments right on the phone call before they even pass the lead over, or when they pass the lead over, you're undercutting them and just contacting them right away and continue to convert them rather than waiting for follow-up time. Yeah.
Exactly. So they're either setting a listing appointment or they're setting a future phone call for that. And if we can't get them, if we can't undercut them and get them right away, then obviously that phone call shows up on our Google Calendar, and we'll have 5 to 10 phone calls to make a day for each of us from those highlighted leads.
Okay. And so what do you think is going to happen once you start putting in past clients' sphere of influence and things like that into the process?
I think I'm not sure we'll put past clients in, because those are our relationships, and it's important for myself and Russell and my buyer's agents to make those touches, and I think I don't think we'll hand that over to the ISAs. They're having so much success with the just listed, just sold, cold calling through the neighborhoods, the old expireds, that type thing, for sale by owners. So we're kind of throwing everything at them, and they're doing really well. But it comes down to getting them the numbers, and it takes a lot of numbers for them to be able to make 1,000 calls a day times 2. And my goal is to have 5 of them within 6 months.
Okay.
So we're going to have to ramp up my number of buyers agents and our ability to convert with even more numbers.
Okay. So. And Jessica, let's address a common question that I think people are going to come to this hangout with a lot, which is, where are you getting the numbers that the OSAs are calling? So you mentioned just listed, old expired, for sale by owner. There's a lot in there that you guys are giving over to those OSAs. Where are all those phone numbers coming from?
Well, most of the phone numbers are coming from just listed, just sold, or for Cold Directory. It's a great resource to pull neighborhood lists and get tons of contact information. They've also recently implemented the ability to get cell phone numbers, which I think is interesting. And then the other thing is for sale by owners, we like the Red X.
Perfect.
So they have the best information.
Okay. Yeah, and cold has been huge for us. You take a neighborhood and there's agents. I'm on all the forums and everything, and agents will say, well, nobody has a home phone anymore. Well, we've found that at least 50% of them do, and now Cole is able to get cell phone numbers in some instances. But you take a neighborhood of 1,000 homes, you're going to get 400 or 500 phone numbers. And you think about 1,000 calls a day. That doesn't mean 1,000 contacts a day. Not everybody answers their phone, but they're then able to go through that neighborhood and reset the list, and they can call the list over and over and over again until they've talked to everybody in the neighborhood. which may not ever happen, but you can reset the list, and that's the same for any list. You're not going to talk to 5,000 expireds over the course of 5 days. You're going to talk to 20 or 50. So you can keep resetting the list and going on. Right now we have, I think, total in my Mojo account, I've got close to 60,000 phone numbers. And that's a combination of neighborhoods, expireds, FSBOs, old buyer leads, all kinds of stuff. So, but the callers, I've been really surprised how good they do with actual cold calls. Not even just listed, just sold, just straight cold calls into a neighborhood. It's been great.
Interesting. So tell me a little bit about, Mark, your process of kind of bringing those OSAs on board, how you're getting them familiar kind of with your team and your market, and where that plays in, how kind of you and Jessica are communicating to manage just the day-to-day effectiveness of the OSAs.
Okay. Yeah, that's been pretty amazing because Jessica manages that. Jessica trains them. Jessica manages the process. We'll come to her with ideas or changes or whatever. I mean, in the initial setup, obviously, they want to know all about your market, your numbers, why the Russell Martin home selling team over other agents in the marketplace, or what do we do well. But I think what's been interesting is that from what I've seen in the role plays that I've done with the OSAs and just the communications, they speak very good English. One of the callers that I have speaks 5 languages fluently. It's pretty impressive, and she's able to speak Spanish. So Spanish leads or opportunities we're able to refer over to a Spanish agent in our office, but we don't lose those opportunities. We're able to make a referral fee on it. But they do it. Jessica does a great job up front of training them, but they also watch tons of YouTube videos, Mike Ferry videos, other coaches across the country, role-playing with top agents across the country. They're listening to other agents role-play and scripts and dialogues, and we'll give them our suggested scripts, but that's not the only script they use. They really, Jessica does a great job of helping the caller align with where the lead is going in the conversation. And so it's not this force-fed one script, you're going to do it my way type thing. I've been really impressed with the ability of the callers to migrate, if you will, if that's the right word, to where the lead is taking the conversation and still get all the information they need from the lead, timing, email address, phone number, think about the phone number, but verifying that they're the decision maker, setting the appointment, talking about, now we've taken it to, from a listing side, there's a lot of sellers in Austin that are going to move within Austin. So what's their next house look like? They're reinforcing that we're going to help them find the next house. We're not only going to sell their house, we're going to help them find the next house. And that's been a great opportunity. And it's like there's no competition because they're setting it up that we're going to take care of them on both sides. And typically we're not competing for the listing. And so that's great. And my business partner is probably ready to slap me because I'm sharing what we're doing here in Austin, Texas, because there's other Austin agents on the call. The point is we're doing it. And so until somebody else actually does it, great. And there's no secrets in real estate. It comes down to who's going to do it and who doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And Jessica, tell me a little bit about that. I mean, if someone was to try to replicate the system that Mark is running, let's say they just went to my Outdesk, for example, and hired a couple of OSAs, what would they have to do to replicate what you're doing with them on a daily basis?
Well, it's going to take a lot of time out of their day. Our business model is built to support real estate agents and small businesses that are running off of the predictable revenue kind of model. And if you're spending your time managing your virtual assistant and coaching them and training them, you're not out there selling houses. So you're going to spend a good 6 to 8 hours a day managing your virtual assistant. and keeping them on task and accountable. I mean, to this point, I've even got an assistant that assists me to make sure that we get everything done. So I couldn't imagine trying to do it by myself and run a business and sell homes. So they would have to hire somebody.
The nice thing too, Matt, is that we do everything virtually. I don't have an office at home. And so, we don't have an office where the team comes in every day and we all meet together. And we have 2 huddle calls a week as a team. I have 2 buyer's agents and myself and my business partner. And we're all virtual. We G-Chat, Google Chat is our life. And the cool thing with the callers is that they Google Chat as well. So, one of them will come on and say, "Hey, boss, I love it. She calls me boss, but she's like, "Hey, I've got this opportunity. What should I do?" While she's on the call. And so I'm able to guide her through that. And then Jessica has role play sessions with all of the callers every day. I couldn't do that. I don't have the time to do that. And it's and I think what we found as well is every caller is different. Everybody's got their strong suits. Some are better with sellers, some are better with buyers, some are better with expireds. Just like agents, some agents can't stand expireds. Well, I love them. So it's some agents are afraid to call. Some agents want to mail a postcard or mail a letter or whatever. I mean, it's a less offensive way to do it. We don't follow that model. So, it's been cool that Jessica's been able to pair up 2 callers for us that get what we do, that are proficient enough technology-wise to use our systems and to communicate with us in a way that everything's real-time and it's effective. And so we've been very, very impressed. That's my endorsement for 1,000 calls a day. Could I go out to my outdesk or some other provider and find them? You bet. Do I have the time to manage them and train them and bring them up? I mean, it takes a month just to bring them up to speed using Jessica's system. I can imagine what it would take if I tried to do it. So, you've got 3 to 4 weeks before they're ever ready to make their first phone call. You put even an experienced agent on a triple line dialer, they're going to freeze. So it takes a while to get up to speed. And so we're really impressed with what they've been able to do.
And I'm just curious, Mark, what kind of adjustments and little tweaks have you found and brought to Jessica through the last couple months? This process that you guys have been through together. What are the things that you're bringing to her and saying, hey, let's make this one small adjustment, and having those things pay off?
I think some of it is just communication style and interpreting what the seller or buyer is actually saying to the caller, because we run into situations where, yeah, we want to sell our house, but it's already listed, right? So we run as many filters as we can to identify active listings and not call them. Obviously, we can't do that. We're not supposed to do that. It still happens, just the nature of making that many calls. But obviously, if they're able to recognize that, we'll definitely keep it in mind for our buyer clients. Sorry about the call, but there's been a couple of instances of that. There's been a couple of instances of they interpreted that they were going to do something in 2 to 3 months. Well, it wasn't. It was actually 2 to 3 years, right? So we'll go in and we figure that out and make the adjustment. We've changed scripting a couple of times to try to play with different scripts to see if one thing might work better than the other. There's a lot of scripts out there right now, or agents that are using this. We might have a buyer for your listing, or we have a buyer for your listing. Well, that's complete BS. We don't do that. And so, they started going down that path. And I'm like, no, we're not going down that path of misleading, in my opinion, the seller that we have a buyer. We have a pool of buyers we work with. We have a ton of buyers we work with. Is your home right for them? Possibly, but it's not, I want to come preview your house so that I can get in the door. And that's not what we do. We want an actual listing appointment where we're going to sit down and talk to you about listing the house. So we've changed, we've tweaked the the scripting a little bit. We've gone back and forth a couple of times about, do we go for buyers and sellers? Do we just go for sellers? That type thing. Right now, we're on a really heavy push for sellers because of the time of year. Buyers are great. My buyers agents are slammed. So we're probably going to back off a little bit on the buyer lead side and really push hard on the listing side for the next couple of months. But that's just our model. So.
And Jessica, same question to you. I'm curious, what kind of adjustments have you made on your end, especially on the hiring side, and how you've kind of been able to find a couple of people that really fit Mark's systems very well?
Well, the interesting part about when I go to hire through my outdesk is I have a team of ladies over there that know exactly what I'm looking for, and I only talk to the top 1% of people that graduate from the My Outdesk University of Real Estate, where they kind of give them the crash course of real estate. If they send me somebody that doesn't fit my criteria, I tell them to go back and start again. I need people that are very high D, very high I. I need someone with a very neutral accent. I want somebody, because of the industry in the Philippines, they have a huge, what they call, business process outsourcing industry. So I need somebody who's not a call center hopper. I want somebody who's going to be dedicated to working for the agent that I pick for them. And most of the time, the people that come to work with us over at My Outdesk are very excited to be part of our team, because I've basically taken the BPO industry and made it virtual for them, so they get to stay home with their kids. So it's as you can see, I've got my daughter sitting here in my lap. I work every day with her right here, and so I think it's really cool that we're able to extend that type of culture and inclusiveness to people in the Philippines. Our calling assistants are able to make more than most nurses do in the Philippines. So I handle spiffs for them so that we keep them motivated. So every now and then I'll do a competition where whoever has the best numbers in a certain category gets a free noise canceling headset, brand new, and $20 on their next paycheck, which is huge over there. We're always in flux. We're always seeing how we can change things, how we can make them better. One of the things that I think Mark and I talked about at one point was making sure that we stayed up to date on the actual follow-up. If somebody says they're ready in 6 months, we want them to go ahead and make that initial call, but then we'll work with the virtual assistant to make sure they're calling them back every month for the next 6 months until that person's ready to move forward. So it's with being as small as we are right now, I'm able to do things and customize them for my clients, so that I'm able to customize each team, which is nice. But we're still following the same basic set of rules and ideas of how to hand over the leads and work with the virtual assistants.
Okay. And just a reminder to everyone that's watching, so on the Q&A app, we're going to open it up, and we'd love to answer any questions that you have. So if you type those in, I will bring them to Mark and Jessica and get them answered for you. But just for myself, like, Mark, what's if somebody had approached you with this idea, if somebody pitched this to you before you had done it yourself, what would your main concern, your main objection have been? Like, what are we not asking up till this point?
So I've been prospecting for 15 years, and cold calling, and I was a Mike Ferry client back in the day, and so calling and calling expireds and calling that stuff. So I was always trying to figure out, how can I replicate me and hire somebody to do it for me, but do it, sounds very egotistical, but do it as good as I do, right? It's because I have a very high conversion rate. So and I could never figure it out. And hiring, managing, training, keeping somebody engaged. There's an agent here in Austin that has 23 people on his team. I think he's got 10 or 15 inside salespeople. They're in his office. It's a boiler room type environment. It works great for him. He does more volume than we do. That's awesome. But he has 23 people to manage. I don't want to manage 23 people. I don't even want an office. right? I mean, we have a great life. We mountain bike, we surf, we travel, we work, but when we work hard, and I coach agents, and so we had a lot going on, but we like to enjoy life. So I could never really figure out how to hire people and manage people that would do it, that actually enjoyed doing it, and that actually could deal with the rejection, right? And not be a victim of sales call reluctance. I have a book on my shelf called Call Reluctance. You know, there's a science to it, and you know, it's a complete mental thing. So how do you keep 10, 15 people engaged all the time? There's an agent now that started doing it. He's had some success with it on his own team. I think he's in Michigan or somewhere. But you know, so now he's going out to other agents across the country and basically farming out his ISAs to call for other agents, doing the same thing that Jessica's doing, but with American employees. And obviously the rate's going to be much higher, because you're not going to find an American that's going to sit and call for 8 hours a day, make 1,000 dials a day, and talk to 30, 50 people a day. I've done 50 a day. It is tough. It's tough, right? And some days you have great days, and some days you only get 10 people, and your goal is 50. And you're like, oh my God, how am I going to get there? So, you know, we know the numbers. We know the numbers work. But when we found Jessica and you know 1,000 calls a day, it was like they figured it out. They figured out how to do it, and we can do it. And for $2,600 a month for a caller, I can't go pay somebody 30 grand a year, which was what that would equate to make 1,000 dials a day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, and not have them fry themselves in 3 weeks, right? So it's good, and I think that we're working well enough with these two callers, and hopefully with the callers that we add. I'm not worried about them leaving us. I'm not. There's a bond there that you develop with the person, and there's a human factor, even though they're however many thousand miles away. That, you know, she knows there's love between the two of us and the team. Of we appreciate what she's doing and what he's doing. We have a male and a female. They know that there's a bond there and interaction, that we high five them when they do good, and we give them opportunities to learn when they're not. But it's, you know, it's all done through Jessica, and it's good stuff. So I don't know if I answered the question, but I can't. I looked at it. I've looked at it and looked at it over and over again. How do I do this myself over the years? I don't think there's a good model for it. You know.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you found a way to be okay with the fact that they're not as good as you, but the scale of it is much bigger.
Very scalable, and I can come back in and convert. If that initial conversation's been had and they're much softer than I am, you can probably tell I'm kind of an intense person when I get excited about something. So they're much softer than I would be. They're able to extract more information. If I can come in for the kill, if you will, and set the appointment, if they haven't been able to set the appointment, then we're much better off.
Now, tell me about the psychology of it. When you're doing the follow-up versus making the calls and initiating the conversations yourself, is there a difference in the level of respect that the prospect has for you when you're coming along and all of a sudden you're set up by somebody else that is saying, hey, this person's going to give you a call, this is the head of our team, you know, like what's the psychology of making those follow-up calls versus if you're doing all the prospecting yourself?
Right. You know, it's been interesting because that's exactly what happens. They set it up, and when I call, I just say, hey, you know, really appreciate your time on the phone with my assistant Joanna, and just wanted to follow up, you know, on y'all's conversation. I see that you're going to be moving to Cedar Park, and you're looking for a 3-2. I just roll right into it. I don't spend a whole lot of time on the fact that you were talking to my caller from the Philippines. They don't know where they're at, you know. So it's more they're my assistant. And it's just like I call my buyer's agents my business partners. When I hand off a buyer lead to my buyer's agent, I set the client up that that's my business partner. They're just as important to you. You're just as important to them as you are to me, and we're a team. It's the same thing with the callers. So, but I've never had pushback to date of someone saying that, well, I didn't appreciate calling or talking to your assistant when I could have been talking to you or whatever. I think that's kind of where you're going with the question, but that hasn't happened. It's been a great setup, and you just take it from there and run with it. It's just like anything else in scripting. It's they can have an objection, but if you take that objection and turn it into a positive or overcome the objection and move right back into your scripting, that's what the goal is. The goal is the appointment. It doesn't matter what the conversation was.
Yeah. Is there anything else that agents need to know about the follow-up side to increase their conversion?
I don't think you can talk to them enough. I don't think you can. I don't think you can over follow up, because the old rule of 7 no's to get a yes. We're emailing them, we are calling them, we are texting them down the road just as follow-ups. We're sending them bomb video emails with introductions. We're sending them our pre-list packet. So there's several touch points that go into this if we don't set up an appointment right off the bat. And it's been interesting, especially on the buyer side. It's that 5th or 6th communication that they raise their hand and say, okay, let's engage. And so you've got to go deep. And if you don't get them on the first time, you don't get them on the second time, don't stop. That's just an opportunity to keep going. And so we've, now that we've built in these buckets in the Mojo, that we can just go in and hit, the 5 to 10 day follow-ups, and it rips out 30 numbers of people, and it's got all the notes there, and it's got everything there. That's made us much more efficient.
And if there's anyone that's watching that has questions for Mark, type them either into the Q&A app that's live right now, or if you want to just type them into the as a comment on the Google Plus page. I'm watching that as well, so I can bring them to the guys. Jessica, is there anything that you want to go over with Mark that you feel like people should know? Is there any stat that we haven't gone over yet that you can point out? I don't think we can hear. Yeah, muted.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to keep the baby noise to a minimum. Yeah. I can go over his stats from last week. He had some pretty impressive numbers from last week.
Yeah, let's do it.
Between both of his callers. They did about 6,500 attempts between the two of them last week and made 206 contacts. And they converted 33 highlighted leads. They sent over. So that's that's a week in Mark Martin's office.
Yeah, 15% conversion rate on contacts to opportunities is strong.
Yep.
Yeah, because you seem to have, at least from the outside looking in, Mark, a pretty high threshold for what you want to be sent over to you.
Yeah, and we have several different buckets, which I'm not sure Jessica's a fan of, but it's a lot to keep up with. But a highlighted lead, right, for us is either a listing appointment or a phone call back that the lead is expecting. But if they just want a market snapshot and to be kept abreast of what's going on in the market over time, they're not going to do anything right away, we drop that into a separate bucket.
Right.
If they're a long-term nurture that not going to do anything for more than a year, we drop that into another bucket. If they're the 2 leads of the day that the callers weren't able to convert, we drop that into another one. So when she says highlighted leads, we're talking only about people who actually have a listing appointment set or a phone call set for a follow-up for either a buyer or seller. And I think that's different, Jessica, than what you typically do. And how you typically quantify a highlighted lead. I could be off base, but I know we've modified it a little bit to strengthen the quality of the leads, right?
We have. That's your spreadsheet is definitely more in detail with different pages than any of my other clients. I will say that we like to qualify a highlighted lead as anybody that's looking to do business in the next 12 months as a company as a whole. For you, we are tracking all of the market snapshot people. We are also keeping up with the long-term nurture. Even though those aren't necessarily highlighted leads for your team right now, we will go back and call them again and convert them into highlighted leads when they're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were talking about this earlier, Mark, that's really the key to this whole thing is you have to have quite a few different good follow-up systems in place, and you came into this with those systems already established and already smoothly running in your team. So then basically you went out and you built this system that throws in a bunch of leads into the top of the funnel because you've already got the middle and the end of the funnel just firing on all cylinders. So
right. I think Brian has a question.
Yeah, so if an agent wants to call expired or FSBOs themselves and have 1,000 calls a day, just do straight cold calling, can that be set up?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's hey Brian. So you're using the Mojo dialer, so you can set up whatever contact type you want, whether it's expireds, FSBOs, whatever. So we tell Jessica sometimes we just want to do cold calling. Sometimes we just want to do just listed in a certain neighborhood around a certain listing. But I found that our callers are good enough to actually call the expireds and for sale by owners and convert them. And so the other thing is I'm also calling them, right? So if Joanna calls and I happen to call 2 days later, or I've already called them 2 months before, they're getting called by 40 agents, right? They don't remember who's who. So Joanna may have an opportunity because she's soft-spoken and sweet and nice, and I'm the high-pressure asshole that wants to sell the get the listing appointment. They may respond better to her. So we decided to add that in. But absolutely yes, Brian, you can segregate the types of calls.
Yeah. So one more question from Jimmy Wilkes. What time or times do you find making calls working the best?
For most of my team, we've moved to a Tuesday through Saturday shift. Everybody is either starting their calling day at 10 a.m. and ending at 7, or they start at 11 a.m. and end at 8 p.m. So we do play around with the numbers, but Monday is the absolute worst day to call. So we never work Mondays. It is always a Tuesday through Sunday. We want to have as many weekend days as possible. I've noticed sometimes the Sunday shifts are not as strong as they could be. So like I said earlier, we're always in flux trying to figure out the best way to do things. I'm completely open to new ideas and options as long as they bring numbers.
Yeah, we've found, Jimmy, that Saturdays are amazing days. That seems to be the highest conversion days. And Brian, back to your point on the expireds and FSBOs, you want to be calling those at 8 o'clock in the morning or before anyway. You're not going to, our callers aren't calling today's expireds at 8 o'clock in the morning. We do that. So, they're focused on the old ones. And FSBOs obviously can call any time, but expireds, you definitely want to be first. If you're not first, you're last. But on the old ones, you can call them anytime.
Good deal. All right, well, we've just got a couple minutes left here, so I just want to give everybody the opportunity and the information they need, Mark, to connect with you, because you also do coaching. And so if somebody wanted to implement something like this in their business, obviously you would be a great one to help with that. So you coach under Dirk Zeller. So what's the best way to get in contact and connect with you about your coaching, and even just to send referrals into the Austin area?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things. Obviously, Facebook. Just look me up on Facebook, Mark Martin. I think my Facebook, facebook.com/markmartinonline. And then my email address is markmartinonline@gmail.com. So, either way, love to chat. We have a great referral network because of the amount of business that we do. We send out quite a few referrals. Obviously, the callers are identifying referral opportunities if the people are moving to Denver or wherever. So we do that. And, love to, on the coaching side, if folks are looking at coaching and they're serious about their business, certainly want to talk to them about that.
Perfect.
So
and then same question for you, Jessica. How do people get in contact with you?
Yeah, the best way to get in touch with me is Jessica at 1000callsaday.com, just like our website address. That's 1000 calls a day. You can also reach me on my cell phone number, which is 702-706. Hang on, I'm really bad. I don't ever remember my phone number. Okay, that's really bad of me.
I think it's 8341.
There you go.
All right.
I'm
So
sitting here trying to look it up.
702-706-8341. All right. Guys, it was a pleasure. We appreciate you both being here today. Hopefully everyone's questions got answered. I think we got into the hard numbers and the hard data that everybody was really interested in. But if there was something that you didn't get answered, if there was a key number or a key stat that maybe we didn't cover or fully explain, post it up on the Google Plus page, or you can email Mark directly. I'm sure he'd be happy to answer you, and I'm sure we'll be checking back in with Mark here over the course of this year just to see how he's doing and what kind of adjustments and tweaks they're making to the program just to make it more successful.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, and we'll see you all at the next Real Estate VA Outbound Prospecting Hangout.
Thanks.